Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that a sculptor well those passions read which yet survive. Stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." Nothing beside remains, round the decay of that colossal wreck. Boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away.
London by William Blake. I wander through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every ban, the mind-forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn's infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage hearse.
William Wordsworth, extract from The Prelude.
One summer evening, led by her, I found a little boat tied to a willow tree, within a rocky cove, its usual home.
Straight, I unloosed her chain, and stepping in, pushed from the shore.
It was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure, nor without the voice of mountain echoes did my boat move on.
Leaving behind her still, on either side, small circles glittering idly in the moon, until they melted all into one track of sparkling light.
But now, like one who rose, proud of his skill, to reach a chosen point, with an unswerving line I fixed my view upon the summit of a craggy ridge, the horizon's utmost boundary.
Far above was nothing but the stars and the grey sky.
She was an elf in pinnace.
Lustily, I dipped my oars into the silent lake, and, as I rose upon the stroke, my boat went heaving through the water like a swan.
When, from behind that craggy steep till, then, the horizon's bound, a huge peak, black and huge, as if with voluntary power instinct, upreared its head.
I struck and struck again, and growing still in stature, the grim shape towered up between me and the stars, and still, for so it seemed, with purpose of its own and measured motion like a living thing, strode after me.
With trembling oars I turned, and through the silent water stole my way, back to the covert of the willow tree.
There, in her mooring place, I left my bark, and through the meadows homeward went, in grave and serious mood.
But after I had seen that spectacle, for many days, my brain worked with a dim and undetermined sense of unknown modes of being.
Over my thoughts there hung a darkness. Call it solitude or blank desertion.
No familiar shapes remained. No pleasant images of trees, of sea or sky, no colours of green fields.
But huge and mighty forms that do not live like living men moved slowly through the mind by day and were a trouble to my dreams.
My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. That's my Last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now, for our Pandulph's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Would please you sit and look at her? I said Fra Pandulph by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask if they durst, how such a glance came there. So, not the first are you to turn and ask thus. Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only that called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek. Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whate'er she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one. My favourite her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherries some officious fool broke for her in the orchard. The white mule she rode round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men, good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900-year-old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling? Even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say, just this or that in you disgusts me. Here you miss, or there exceed the mark. And if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse, e'en then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whene'er I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew. I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. There she stands, as if alive. Would please you rise? We'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the Count your master's no munificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. Nay, we'll go together, sir. Notice Neptune, though, taming a seahorse, thought a rarity which Klaus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me.
Exposure by Wilfred Owen. Our brains ache in the merciless ice east winds that knife us. Wearied, we keep awake because the night is silent. Low, drooping flares confuse our memory of the salient. Worried by silence, centuries whisper, curious, nervous, but nothing happens. Watching, we hear the mad gust tugging on the wire, like twitching agonies of men among its brambles. Northward, incessantly, the flickering gunnery rumbles, far off like a dulled rumour of some other war. What are we doing here? The poignant misery of dawn begins to grow. We only know war lasts, rain soaks and clouds sag stormy. Dawn, massing in the east her melancholy army, attacks once more in ranks on shivering ranks of grey. But nothing happens. Sudden successive flights of bullets streak the silence, less deadly than the air that shudders black with snow, with sidelong flowing flakes that flock, pause and renew. We watch them wandering up and down the wind's nonchalance, but nothing happens. Pale flakes with fingering stealth come feeling for our faces. We cringe in holes back on forgotten dreams and stare, snow-dazed, deep into grassier ditches. So we drowse, sun, doze, littered with blossoms trickling where the blackbird fusses. Is it that we are dying? Slowly, our ghosts drag home, glimpsing the sunk fires, glozed with crusted dark red jewels, crickets jingle there. For hours the innocent mice rejoice, the house is theirs. Shutters and doors all closed. On us, the doors are closed. We turn back to our dying. Since we believe not otherwise can kind fires burn, nor ever sun smile true on child or field or fruit. For God's invincible spring, our love is made afraid. Therefore not loath, we lie out here. Therefore we're born, for love of God seems dying. Tonight this frost will fasten on this mud and us, shriveling many hands, puckering foreheads crisp. The burying party, picks and shovels and shaking grasp, pause over half-known faces. All their eyes are ice, but nothing happens.
Storm on the Island by Seamus Heaney. We are prepared. We build our houses squat, sink walls in rock and roof them with good slate. This wizened earth has never travelled us with hay, so, as you see, there are no stacks or stooks that can be lost. Nor are there trees which might prove company when it blows full blast. You know what I mean? Leaves and branches can rage a tragic chorus in a gale, so that you can listen to the thing you fear, forgetting that it pummels your house too.
But there are no trees, no natural shelter. You might think that the sea is company, exploding comfortably down the cliffs, but no. When it begins, the flung spray hits the very windows, spits like a tame cat, turns savage. We just sit tight while wind dives and strafes invisibly. Space is a salvo. We are bombarded by the empty air. Strange, it's a huge nothing that we fear.
Bayonet charge Ted Hughes. Suddenly he awoke and was running raw, in raw seamed hot khaki, his sweat heavy, stumbling across a field of clods towards a green hedge that dazzled with rifle fire, hearing bullets smacking the belly out of the air. He lugged a rifle numb as a smashed arm, the patriotic tear that had brimmed in his eye, sweating like molten iron from the centre of his chest. In bewilderment, then he almost stopped. In what cold clockwork of the stars and the nations was he, the hand pointing that second? He was running like a man who has jumped up in the dark and runs, listening between his footfalls for the reason of his still running, and his foot hung like statuary in mid-stride. Then the shot slashed furrows, threw up a yellow hair that rolled like a flame and crawled in a threshing circle, its mouth wide, open silent, its eyes standing out. He plunged past with his bayonet towards the green hedge. King, honour, human dignity, etc., dropped like luxuries in a yelling alarm to get out of that blue, crackling air, his terror's touchy dynamite.
Remains by Simon Armitage. On another occasion, we get sent out to tackle looters raiding a bank, and one of them legs it up the road, probably armed, possibly not. Well, myself and somebody else are all of the same mind, so all three of us open fire, three of a kind, all letting fly, and I swear I see every round as it rips through his life. I see broad daylight on the other side. So we've hit this looter a dozen times, and he's there on the ground, sort of inside out. Pain itself, the image of agony. One of my mates goes by and tosses his guts back into his body, then he's carted off in the back of a lorry. End of story, except not really. His blood shadow stays on the streets, and out on patrol I walk right over it week after week. Then I'm home on leave, but I blink and he bursts again through the doors of the bank. Sleep, and he's probably armed, possibly not. Dream, and he's torn apart by a dozen rounds, and the drink and the drugs won't flush him out. He's here in my head when I close my eyes, dug in behind enemy lines, not left for dead in some sun-stunned, sand-smothered land or 6 feet under desert sand, but near to the knuckle, here and now, his bloody life in my bloody hands.
Poppies by Jane Weir. 3 days before Armistice Sunday, and poppies had already been placed on individual war graves. Before you left, I pinned one onto your lapel, crimped petals, spasms of paper red, disrupting a blockade of yellow bias binding around your blazer. Sellotape bandaged around my hand, I rounded up as many white cat hairs as I could, smoothed down your shirt's upturned collar, steeled the softening of my face. I wanted to graze my nose across the tip of your nose, play at being Eskimos like we did when you were little. I resisted the impulse to run my fingers through the gelled blackthorns of your hair. All of my words flattened, rolled, turned into felt, slowly melting. I was brave as I walked with you to the front door, threw it open, the world overflowing like a treasure chest. A split second and you were away, intoxicated. After you'd gone, I went into your bedroom, released a songbird from its cage. Later, a single dove flew from the pear tree, and this is where it has led me, skirting the churchyard walls, my stomach busy, making tucks, darts, pleats, hatless, without a winter coat or reinforcements of scarf, gloves.
On reaching the top of the hill, I traced the inscriptions on the wall memorial, leaned against it like a wishbone. The dove pulled freely against the sky, an ornamental stitch. I listened, hoping to hear your playground voice catching on the wind.
War Photographer by Karen Ann Duffy. In his dark room, he is finally alone, with spools of suffering set out in ordered rows. The only light is red and softly glows, as though this were a church and he a priest preparing to intone a mass. Belfast, Beirut, Phnom Penh, all flesh is grass. He has a job to do. Solutions slop in trays beneath his hands, which did not tremble then, though seem to now. Rural England, home again to ordinary pain, which simple weather can dispel, to fields which don't explode beneath the feet of running children in a nightmare heat. Something is happening. A stranger's features faintly start to twist before his eyes. A half-formed ghost. He remembers the cries of his man's wife, how he sought approval without words to do what someone must, and how the blood stained into foreign dust. 100 agonies in black and white, from which his editor will pick out 5 or 6 for Sunday's supplement. The reader's eyeballs prick with tears between the bath and pre-lunch beers. From the aeroplane he stares impassively at where he earns his living, and they do not care.
Tissue by Immigrant Darker. Paper that lets the light shine through. This is what could alter things. Paper thin by age or touching. The kind you find in well-used books. The back of a Quran where a hand has written in the names and histories who was born to whom. The height and weight, who died where and how. On which sepia date. Pages smoothed and stroked and turned transparent with attention. If buildings were paper, I might feel their drift, see how easily they fall away on a sigh, a shift in the direction of the wind. Maps too, the sun shines through their borderlines, the marks that rivers make, roads, rail tracks and mountain folds. Find slips from grocery shops that say how much was sold and what was paid by credit card, might fly our lives like paper kites. An architect could use all this, paper layer over layer, luminous, script over numbers over line, and never wish to build again with brick. Or block, but let the daylight break through capitals and monoliths, through the shapes that pride can make. Find a way to trace a grand design. With living tissue, raise a structure, never meant to last, of paper smoothed and stroked, and thin to be transparent, turned into your skin.
The Immigrant by Carol Rumans. There once was a country. I left it as a child, but my memory of it is sunlight clear. For it seems I never saw it in that November which, I'm told, comes to the mildest city. The worst news I receive of it cannot break my original view, the bright, filled paperweight. It may be at war, it may be sick with tyrants, but I am branded by an impression of sunlight. The white streets of that city, the graceful slopes, glow even clearer as time rolls its tanks and the frontiers rise between us, close like waves. That child's vocabulary I carry here like a hollow doll opens and spills a grammar. Soon I shall have every coloured molecule of it. It may by now be a lie, banned by the state, but I cannot get it off my tongue. It tastes of sunlight. I have no passport. There's no way back at all. But my city comes to me in its own white plane. It lies down in front of me, docile as paper. I comb its hair and I love its shining eyes. My city takes me dancing through the city of walls. They accuse me of absence. They circle me. They accuse me of being dark in their free city. My city hides behind me. They mutter death, and my shadow falls as an evidence of sunlight.
Kamikaze by Beatrice Garland. Her father embarked at sunrise with a flask of water, a samurai sword in the cockpit, a shaven head full of powerful incantations, and enough fuel for a one-way journey into history. But halfway there, she thought, recounting it later to her children, he must have looked far down at the little fishing boats, strung out like bunting on a green-blue translucent sea, and beneath them, arching in waves, like a huge flag, waved first one way and then the other in a figure of 8, the dark shoals of fishes, flashing silvers as their bellies swiveled towards the sun, and remembered how he and his brothers, waiting on the shore, built cairns of pearl grey pebbles to see who's withstood longest the turbulent inrush of breakers, bringing their father boat safe. Yes, grandfather's boat, safe to the shore, salt-sodden, awash, with cloud-marked mackerel, black crabs, feathery prawns, the loose silver of white bait, and once a tuna, the dark prince, muscular, dangerous. And though he came back, my mother never spoke again. In his presence, nor did she meet his eyes. And the neighbours too, they treated him as though he no longer existed. Only we children still chattered and laughed. Till gradually, we too learned to be silent, to live as though he had never returned, that this was no longer the father we loved. And sometimes, she said, he must have wondered which had been the better way to die.
Checking Out My History by John Agard. Them tell me, why them want to tell me? Bandage up my eye with my own history, blind me to my own identity. Them tell me about 1066 and all that. Them tell me about Dick Whittington and he cat. But Toussaint L'Ouverture, no, them never tell me about that. Toussaint, a slave with vision lick back. Napoleon, battalion, and first black Republican born. Toussaint de Fawn, to the French, Toussaint de Bicon, of the Haitian Revolution. Them tell me about the man who discovered the balloon, and the cow who jumped over the moon. Them tell me about the dish run away with the spoon, but them never tell me about Nanny the Maroon. Nanny, seafar woman of mountain dream, fire woman struggle, hopeful stream, to freedom river. Them tell me about Lord Nelson and Waterloo, but them never tell me about Shaka, the great Zulu. Them tell me about Columbus and 1492, but what happened to the Caribs and the Arawaks too? Them tell me about Florence Nightingale and she lamp, and how Robin Hood used to camp. Them tell me about old King Cole was a merry old soul, but them never tell me about Mary Sicole. From Jamaica she travelled far, to the Crimean War. She volunteered to go, and even when the British said no, she still braved the Russian snow. A healing star among the wounded, a yellow sunrise to the dying. Them tell me, what them want to tell me. But now I'm checking out my own history, I carving out me identity.
So this is The Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the Light Brigade. Was there a man dismayed? Not though a soldier knew someone had blundered. Theirs not make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs not to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with a shot and shell, boldly they rode and well, into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell rode the 600. Flashed all their sabres bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabring the guns there, charging an enemy while all the world wondered. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Cassock and Russian reeled from the sabre stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600.
Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while the horse and hero fell, that they had fought so well, come through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell, all that was left of them, left of the 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made! All the world wondered. Honour the charge they made. Honour the light brigade. Noble 600.